Yes,
Sumaya.
it's that Sumaya that you know.
Okay, great. So, thanks for joining us. And we'll ask people to put their videos on initially, at least. Usually we have probably got about 5 minutes or so before we're due to start. People often start drifting in sort of around the time. So we like to see who we're talking to if possible. If you're available to put your video on, if you're not, then okay. And we have also Mutasam. Can you hear me, Mutasam? Hello, I'm speaking now to Mutasam. Can you hear me? I'm not getting any sound yet. Okay, Mutasam, I have a thing saying you'll start the video later, but can you unmute yourself so I can speak to you? Hello? Okay, I'm moving on now while hopefully Mutasam is just away briefly. I have Roberta Dragu. Can you hear me, Roberta? If you take yourself off your...
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Excellent. Do you have a video that we can see you on, Roberta?
Yes, of course.
Excellent. Great.
Can you?
Good to see
Yes.
you. Yes, can you see me all right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. We like to see as many as we can of people who are there. Sometimes people go, oh, well, I didn't know you were going to look at me. I haven't done my hair or whatever it is. The reason being, sometimes if everybody's muted and they have their video off, we have no idea if they've gone to sleep, if they can hear what we're saying or what's going on. So, and especially for a subject where we're dealing with communication, where we're dealing with people influencing each other and all that, it's really nice to see the face. It's what makes it quite difficult to do NLP when you're doing people wearing masks and all the rest of it, because it's really one of the things we'll focus on this evening in the session Phil will talk about is how to actually look at eyes and find out things more about how someone is processing information through the eyes. But obviously with the video, if it's switched off, we don't even get the eyes, and if it's muted as well, then we don't get anything at all. So thanks for joining us. And as I said, we've got a few minutes before we start, so I just like to talk to the early birds when I can. Just give us a little bit of an indication about your background. Do you know anything about NLP already, or is this new for you? Just tell us a little bit about your interest.
I personally don't know much about it. I'm more familiar to Theta healing and Reiki and crystal healing. And I heard about NLP through this, like not much about it.
Okay, so just what you've seen kind of advertised on Illuminations and there.
Yes, and a little bit on other meditations and other courses. That not much.
So some of those people that you've met have actually done some NLP. They've attended NLP courses and so on. Yeah. Did they say anything about what they thought the difference was between NLP and any of the other things that you've been doing? From what you described, you've been looking at energy modalities and energy healing. Did they say anything about?
No.
Okay, good. Well, as Phil likes to say, fresh meat.
Yes, exactly.
We like that because, you know, as I said, Phil's a bit naughty, but he sometimes says, well, the thing is, if no one knows anything about NLP, that's great, because then we can tell them anything at all and they wouldn't know if it was true or not.
Correct.
Of course, it will be true. What we say will be accurate. So the purpose this evening is to give an introduction to people who are complete beginners. There are people here who probably done some NLP. They might just want a refresher or to find a little bit more about how we run these sessions. We do have some slides. We're going to be showing some slides. We like to usually do a few introductions as people are coming in. I see we've been joined by an Abdallah. I'll just say to Abdallah, hopefully you can hear me, and Constance coming on now as well. That if you have got a microphone there, please unmute yourself so that we can speak to you. And if you have a video, so much the better, so we can actually see you as well, just as you can see me, and you'll be seeing Phil very shortly. You might be wondering what's she doing there. This is Layla, Dr. Layla with you. And I'm just going to do the intro to this, and then I'll come in and do a little session partway towards the end of the session this evening. Phil will run most of the session. He's just doing a couple of things before he comes and takes over from me. But as I said, I'll do the intros and get us started, and then we'll go into the the business of the evening, the ABC of NLP. I have an RA come online as well. Again, those of you who just joined us, if you can please put on your mic so that we can hear from you, because we are a little bit still ahead of when we're scheduled to start, not for a couple of minutes. So I'm just getting to know those people who are joining us before we get started, just to say hi, find out who you are. If there's anything particular you've come to find out about NLP, or if you're already an expert and you've come to test us out. I was just joking with Roberta that we could tell you anything about NLP. If you're all newbies, we could tell you anything at all and you wouldn't know if it was true or not. But I happen to know someone online, I won't identify who, actually is very familiar with NLP, so she knows if we're telling you the right things about NLP or not. So thanks for joining us, Constance. I see you're there and you've got your video on, which is great. How are you doing?
Okay, yes, I've taken a little introductory course before and I find it very interesting. I would like to hear another perspective, you know, like another introduction. I'm a teacher, I'm not a therapist, but in the future, I think I'd like to do more work with counseling. And I have been fascinated and interested in NLP and the power of visualization and the power of language and body language for a long time. So, and I've had 1 or 2 sessions myself. But like I said, I haven't had a lot of time to pursue it because I'm a teacher, but I still see a lot of possibilities in the field of teaching for using NLP.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you now because it's something I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in health and in education. But the majority of people who come to NLP come from so many different backgrounds. Oh. There are also very specific things. For example, Phil and I have run a number of courses specifically for teachers. I think the furthest away we've done is in Pakistan. We were invited to do some NLP for teachers there. And so we had the interesting situation of being teaching in the madrasa in the middle of Karachi while there were riots going on outside. So that was quite fun. Nothing like teaching stress management and NLP and the sort of techniques that take you deeply inside while you've got riots going on around you.
and did you get feedback on your techniques? Did people use your techniques and did they give you feedback?
Well, as a matter of fact, we did on the, and what I was going to say about the teachers, I'll come to another project in a minute. I'll mention to you that's an education project, a big one that happened in the UK, but the one in Pakistan was quite interesting because the people who invited us over were the Bori community. Some of you may know or may not know them, but it's a Shia Muslim particular sect that started in India, and they have people around the world. And we were invited there because one of the things they do in Pakistan is they run an educational trust, particularly for girls and girls' education there. Mm. And they wanted us to do some NLP for teachers. So it wasn't the whole 7-day practitioner certification, but it was, I think it was 2 or 3 days maybe we had to actually teach some of the basic applications. They didn't need to know the theory and all the underlying theory. They just wanted to know, how do I actually make this work in the classroom? But what was interesting there was that one of the ladies there, immediately as we were talking about something, it turned out she was just an example that we gave to just close your eyes and imagine, think it was a cat on the mat. And the purpose was to get people to then describe what they visualized, what was in their representation, in their mind of a cat. And immediately Phil said the word cat, there was a scream. And everyone opened their eyes. And she said, I'm phobic of cats, I'm phobic of cats. So he actually fixed her cat phobia very quickly in a matter of minutes.
My goodness.
But what was interesting with that was the next day when they came in, she said, listen, I'm convinced I'm going to do this in the classroom. But just to let you know, I went and used one of the techniques we used in class today with my mom, who hasn't slept well for years, has a terrible problem sleeping. And she said she slept like a baby last night. And so this is someone, not an NLP trained practitioner as such, but just learning some of the applications of NLP. The thing I wanted to mention to you specifically as a teacher, and it may be of interest to others who are either teachers or maybe just parents and people with kids. In the UK, there's someone quite well known who's a British guy who does NLP and works with Richard Bandler, sometimes, who's the guy who originally created and co-founded NLP, and that's Paul McKenna. And actually, Paul McKenna funded and put some money into supporting education authority in the northeast of England. It's called County Durham. And they did a project there, and the lady I know who's the Director of Education internationally for NLP, and I used to know her in the UK when previously in earlier days when we were both in management positions in education. And she said that she wanted to actually come and take schools that were, for example, secondary schools, junior schools, special needs schools, mainstream, just a whole range of teachers from different educational backgrounds, and then spend 2-3 days, I can't remember exactly what it was, but again, like we'd been in Pakistan, teaching the basics of NLP, how you could use it in the classroom with children, in your interactions with the kids, with the pupils. And what was interesting, this project, it came to be called the Durham Education Project. They actually wrote it up, and each teacher then had to apply some of the techniques and then write up what was happening, the changes, and they monitored them over a period of time. And they found quite outstanding results behaviorally in terms of the children's behavior, their conduct in class, their engagement, their academic results. And this was across the board. So it was kids with, if you like, with some learning challenges of various sorts, right through to very bright pupils, academically, gifted children. Across the board and across the age ranges, they found that there were these real peaks, the spikes statistically in the results. So they actually wrote something which, if you send me a follow-up or put in the chat box how to contact you, I can send you, it's there's a PDF document called the Durham Education Report, which is all about the use of NLP in the classroom. So I mean, there are many places doing research on NLP and using it. You know, it's known for sales and influencing and that kind of thing, but it's used in health. In fact, in the UK, in the National Health Service, if a doctor wants to do what they call medical NLP, they can actually get their continuing education unit credits for doing an intensive short course, because again, how you give news to patients, how you give a prognosis or a diagnosis, how you tell them what the outcome is likely to be, how you engage them in their health treatment, can make the difference between literally sometimes life and death. It can make a huge difference to the outcomes. So they're very much, again, aware of the benefits to doctors and nurses and people who are giving medical diagnoses to people. And of course, we know also from not NLP directly, but very, shall we say, linked research in positive psychology, that doctors who are primed for happiness, doctors who put themselves into a resourceful state, which is of course something you can use NLP to do, come twice as quickly to an accurate diagnosis and are more creative in their treatments than doctors who are not. So it's quite dramatic, the difference when doctors are actually primed to go in and be ready to engage with their patients. So it's anyone who says, oh, NLP, there's no research for that, they're way out of date, because whatever you see on the internet, there are societies for research into NLP. So it's actually people have, I think it's either Surrey or Reading University. It's in Surrey anyway, but I'm trying to remember if it's Surrey or Reading. They've actually had people doing PhDs in NLP. So they've actually done their PhD research on NLP in various different applications. So I'm glad you have that interest. And obviously this is a generic overview of NLP that we're giving. Phil will talk very specifically a little bit about using eye-accessing cues, as we call them. And so it's more a general presentation, but if you're interested, as I said, there will be a follow-up. We're planning to do the full practitioner course in Abu Dhabi in the last week of June, because until now, for the last 3 months, we haven't been able to do anything face-to-face with people. And whilst we can do a lot of NLP online, obviously, ideally, it should be done face-to-face. And at the moment, we have permission to deliver it online, but it can only lead to a provisional certification. And then if someone wants the full certificate, they have to attend a follow-up 2-3 days to actually make sure that they can demonstrate they can do the stuff.
I'm sorry, I missed your first name. I see L. Edwards.
It's Layla. I'm Dr. Layla Edwards. So Layla and Phil will be running most of this presentation, but I'm just doing the intro, if you like. I'm the warm-up person tonight. And I'll come in a bit later on and do a specific technique and give Phil a little break for a few slides, and then he'll come in again, and then he'll do a particular application of NLP, and then we'll finish up with any Q&A for both Phil and myself. Will both be there. So thanks for asking that, Constance. And that applies anybody else who's joined us since we just started. I can see there are a few people online now, and we will get started now because we're a bit after 7. The protocol for this is I ask you, A, to let me know that you can hear me by a thumbs up. preferably with your video on, because it's you're all unmuted as far as I'm concerned, but if you choose to mute yourselves, you can. We sometimes ask you to mute yourselves if you've got a lot of feedback and it's causing problems on the sound, or you've got a dog barking or a child laughing or shouting. We ask you because we like to see that we've got people there, that there are people awake and listening and haven't just wandered off to have a cup of tea. We're talking to ourselves. So it's always nice to see people on these webinars. When we're actually teaching online, then we can control you a bit, because we can say, put on your videos and we want to talk to you. But when you're here on a voluntary basis, we can't be so bossy. But it's nice to see your faces. You can all see mine, so I can't pull faces behind your back. But if you have any problems in hearing what I'm saying, please let me know, preferably through the audio or video, but if not, every now and again, I'll check the chat box. I don't do a lot of checking of the chat box because it's a bit distracting to try and do that and manage everything else on here. And because it's a webinar, we're using some slides. We're going to introduce you to some concepts, but please feel free to ask any questions. If we say anything is not clear, our job is to try and make it in plain English. NLP, because it's about neuro-linguistic programming, and Phil will explain more about that later, but there are quite a lot of technical jargon terms, if you like, which can be very off-putting. If you look on the website and you look at the curriculum for NLP, you think, my goodness, unless you're a linguist, you think, what on earth does that mean? And that's fine, you know, as long as you actually know what we're talking about. But if you don't, please ask and we will stop and explain. Or we'll say, look, actually, I'm going to cover that in the next slide. If you can just put that on hold for a moment.
So what is,
go ahead.
Yeah, what is the protocol for asking a question? Should we raise our hand? Because in the more button, there's a raise your hand option.
We're quite happy for you to chip in. And if, when we hear your question, it's, actually, we're going to cover that in a moment, then we'll ask you, put that on hold. If it's, look, I didn't catch what you said, or I've lost my sound, then again, please tell us. And if we can't hear you, do put a chat in the chat box. But it's a good idea to do as you've just done. Put your hand up on the, if you've got a little icon that can do that. And then like now, if your answer's been, if your question's been answered, then you can just click it to switch off. But we don't do too rigidly with these webinars, because as I said, some people want to show themselves, some people don't. Some want to ask questions, some want just to listen. And occasionally we have a problem with the internet goes down. We're hoping that won't happen this evening, but the block that we're in today, the internet went down twice. So it wasn't our computer, it was actually the internet. So we're hoping it will go fine this evening. But if you lose me, if my sound or my picture goes off, it doesn't mean we've just decided to give up on you. It means we're having to log in again. So just hang on in there. And once we say goodbye, we will say goodbye properly. Okay. Has anybody else got any questions about the protocol before we get started with the material now? So I'm seeing I've got, let's see, Andrea, Constance that I've spoken to already, Cindy Lefay, I've got Clara or Clara Rodriguez, Hessa, and okay, Jones from Illuminations. We've got Leslie, we've got Nina, we've got Parvin, Patricia, RA. I don't know what RA stands for. Maybe some people are known by their initials, aren't they? Like JR used to be in Dallas a long time ago. We've got Rahul, Raisa, okay, and Roberta, Sabina, Sabaya, and Layla is on. So we've got a number of you on now. So as I said, we're a little bit after time. We've had some intros, but I'm going to get started now. So I'm going to just check if anyone can't see the slides that I'm showing. Please let me know. You should all have them there. I can't see all of you at once. I can see a certain number because of the slides. So that's why I said, please let me know if for any reason you can't see the slides that I'm showing you. You should be seeing a slide now that says Illuminations at the top, and then says in association with transformations, and at the bottom says the ABC of NLP. So anybody got any problem? Anybody can see that. If I don't hear no, I can't, or see any thumbs down, then I'll assume that you can all hear me and you're all able to follow what I'm saying. Okay, so haven't got anybody at the moment tell me no, so I'm assuming that means therefore that everybody's online and can hear me. Okay, great. So we'll get started. So I was teasing somebody earlier saying, well, if you don't know anything about NLP, we can tell you whatever we like and you won't know any different. But of course, we're not going to do that. So our job is to tell you, give an introduction to NLP. We'll have some people here who know nothing about it, some who know something about it, some have done a fair bit of it maybe. That's absolutely fine. So this is a run through of the basics. And although it seems like maybe a long time, 2 hours, it's actually a very short time, because to teach the basic practitioner course in NLP takes 7 days, 7 full days. And then the master practitioner takes another 7 days. And for those who want to be coaches, there are another 4 days of learning the basics, and then another 2 days of practicing, and then to be assessed in it. So the whole thing, to do the whole full course takes a while, but you can get the basics of NLP, as I said, from the practitioner course. So our job is just to give you an overview and a taster of some of the principles of NLP, if that's okay with everyone. Just to say a little bit about us, I'm not going to spend long on this slide. As I mentioned, although it's got Phil's name there, I'm just introducing, and then I'll come in a bit later, and then Phil will run the majority of this session. We've actually been in the Middle East now. I said to Phil, we need to change that slide, because we've been in the Middle East for longer than that, but 15 years we've actually been delivering and running our own institute in the Middle East. But before that, we spent a couple of years setting up the first private university for women, which was in Bahrain, the Royal University for Women. We've worked in academia, so you could regard us as Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Great. Well, that's at least one of you. Sorry about that. We had one of those complete freezes. It happened the other night on a webinar we were doing, and then after that we were fine. So thanks. Okay, Srina's letting me know. So I'm just going to see now if we can just share the screen, because we had that all set up before. Phil, can you just tell me where the PowerPoint is? Because I had it before, and of course it's not coming up now. I was just on the second slide when it froze. No. Okay. So excuse me, everybody. I'll be as quick as I can with this. If you can just be patient and bear with us for a moment. Anthony. Which one? NLP, this one? Online.
I think you find it's this. Just click on there.
Which one?
There you go.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right, we're hoping that we'll get our document back now. Okay, so right. Can I just check now if or not, whether or not it's, I haven't got the rest of the Zoom at the moment showing. Right. It's not showing on there. Right, so that should be the PowerPoint there now. Yep. That one there. Okay, so are we back with the PowerPoint now, everybody? Yep. I'm looking at Patricia now. Can you see Patricia, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah, looks fine.
Wonderful. Okay, sorry about that. Let's hope that that's our only freeze now. So I was mentioning both Phil and myself are practitioners, and we use NLP in our work as well as teaching other people. And the last thing I want to say, I think is probably one of the most important there before the final button there, where it says we practice what we preach and teach, because we've been actually teaching online. We've done tutorials and work with people individually to some extent online, but not that much. But of course, being locked down in Dubai, we were supposed to be in Morocco the last 2.5 months. We've actually switched to teaching online. And so helping people manage their stress and dealing with new situations is something that we do ourselves. And we do work with a team of international experts and institutes. And of course, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, that is Illuminations, which I think you've all signed up with Illuminations to do this webinar. In terms of our NLP work, I'd like to just say a little bit about what we do. I mentioned practitioner. To those of you who came in early, will have heard me mention teaching NLP for teachers and educators as not the full practitioner course, but as a 2-3 day training for teachers in Karachi, and I gave an example of how that could be used. So introductions to NLP foundations, these don't need a certification. These are basically to give people an idea. And we do quite a bit of that with educators, health professionals, and so on, just to get them to take some of the skills of NLP and apply them. But to actually train in NLP to become certified, the first level is practitioner. The next level, as I was mentioning, is Master Practitioner. And there's also a coaching certification. And when I say we, I'm talking about Global NLP, which comes under, you'll see in a moment, the International Society of NLP. And that's that logo there that you can see, and actually it should have written around it. It's blocked for me at the moment because it's got everybody's pictures on it, but that actually says around it the International Society of NLP. So that's Richard Bandler, and you'll see a picture of him in a moment. That's Dr. Bandler, and he's the person who originally created and then co-founded the Society of NLP with his colleague John Grinder. They went their separate ways some time ago, and Phil will explain to you a little bit about what that means, because some people say, well, I've heard of NLP, but some people say this is NLP and some people say that's NLP. We'll just tell you what the main differences are and specifically what we do when we teach you NLP. One thing I think everybody's pretty much agreed on is that NLP is considered to be the #1 system for communication and influencing, and we refer to that as performance transformance. So as I mentioned earlier, people use NLP for improving their sales techniques, their marketing. Politicians use it. Most presidents and presidential candidates for many years have either been NLPers or they've had their campaign chiefs. For example, Barack Obama had a campaign chief who was an expert in internet and social media and NLP. So people are well aware of its influence. Our concern is for regular people, whatever they do, to be able to learn NLP skills to apply in their lives, both their personal and their professional lives. So I'm going to call Phil to come and talk about the history of NLP and give you some background about NLP. And then, as I said, we'll look at the application. So Phil, can you kind of take over on the history of NLP? I think we've got quite a few people online, but you'll just see a few of them up in the corner there.
Hi. Now, I know there are some people that I know here, and probably some people that I don't. Now, by the end of this, there will be people that I still don't know because most people are not showing me their faces. Just bear with me a second while I go close the door. Okay, oh, Layla. And there's Les. And here's Sabina. Patricia. Okay. Let me just see. Is Samaya still here? Okay, got the general drift now. So, welcome. Layla's given you a bit of an introduction. We're going to take this in sections, each do a section. Now, of course, one of the big disadvantages of doing this kind of thing online is what just happened. So fingers crossed, and feel free to pray that the rest of the session goes okay. And I would like to invite people to show me their face. I had this discussion with just somebody else just the other day, the CEO of the Garden of Eden, who was telling me that she'd just done an online webinar in which nobody would show their face, and she found it quite disconcerting. So I'm fairly tough about this kind of thing, but it is nice to know who you're talking to, isn't it? I mean, we have more distance than ever between us at the moment due to the strange concepts that are being imposed on us all, but we can still at least just see each other, can't we? Now, so thank you very much for the people who've just joined in with their faces. So I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of the background of NLP, and I think Layla's probably already explained that there's a million people teaching NLP one way or another now. I think she's probably just explained that ours is the original from the guy who originally invented it, which is or created it, which is Dr. Richard Bandler. So here's a little history. Now, originally, this was the creation of Dr. Richard Bandler, Dr. John Grinder, and it was back in the 70s, and it was in California. If you know anything about psychological history, you'll know that California was a hotbed of innovation and creativity and new ideas, and people were coming there from all over the world. And you go back to the 70s, and everything was happening in California, and lots of the schools and the people that became famous since then were there at that time. Now, this was lucky for Richard, because three of the people that were there working there at that time were Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, and Milton Erickson. And you may or may not have heard of these people. If you haven't heard of them, I recommend you find out more about them, because they're all giants in the field. And from left to right, this is Fritz Perls. Now, Fritz Perls is the guy who invented, we're talking about a lot of things being invented in the 70s, you know, the science, or some people would say more like the art of psychology, began really and, you know, got off the ground in the late 19th century, early 20th century, people like Freud and Jung and so on. And then it poodled along, you know, in its own sweet way. But when it got to the 70s, there was a sudden explosion of all sorts of new ideas and new ways of working, and people beginning to bring in things from different traditions and different parts of the world. Now, Fritz Perls invented Gestalt therapy, and to put simply, Gestalt therapy is the idea that it's possible for us to resolve issues with people who may not even be there. They don't have to be there because they can be there in our imagination. And this is an interesting basic idea within NLP and some other approaches, is that we're actually not relating to people most of the time, and we'll go into this a bit more. Seems like we are, we think we are, but really, you know, we're relating to the image we have of that person in our minds. And I'm sure everybody can think of a time when somebody perhaps behaved towards them in a way that they found really odd, behaved towards them as if they were somebody else. And you'll find this often happens. And this is especially useful where, you know, often we cannot resolve things with other people. We may be advancing psychologically or spiritually, but other people that we care about or that we're involved with may not be. And in some cases, they may not be present. They may have passed away, or they may be too far distant from us physically for us to do anything about that. So this Gestalt idea is very important, and that's something that Fritz left us with. Another person was Virginia Satir. Now, each of these people created something completely new. Virginia Satir originated family therapy. There wasn't really anyone doing that before she came along. And she's also very important in NLP in terms of how we relate. Milton Erickson, now here's the guy who came up with the idea. 2 key things we can attribute to him. Well, more than 2 if we go into the details, but I don't think we'll have too much time for that. One thing Milton Erickson came up with, a set of language patterns that subsequently became named in NLP, the Milton model of language. And the other thing he came up with, the concept of brief therapy. Now, if you look back at your traditional therapy, Jung and Bandler and Freud and all these people, you'll find that people are sometimes in therapy for years. And what happens in that process of being in therapy for years is often not much. So they get to know an awful lot about what's wrong with them, but not much about what to do about it. Erickson came up with a completely different idea. He didn't want to see people for more than a few sessions. And he said, I just want people to come in, get fixed, go away, send me a present, send me a letter, it was letters in those days, and tell me that they're fine. That's all he wanted. If they have to come back, fine. But otherwise, we just want people fixed. We need to spend a long time on these things. Now, what happened with Richard Bandler is that he studied these 3 people. He was a student of psychology. He was taking a master's in psychology at that time at the University of Santa Cruz in California. And he studied these 3 people. Now, Fritz, he studied mainly on videotape, as it was at the time, because Fritz actually died before he was able to really study him closely. Virginia Satir was interesting because his part-time, he had a kind of part-time job as a student, as students often do, and his part-time job was being her assistant. So he would actually drive her around, and he would sit in on many of her workshops and trainings. He would record what she did, would video what she did, and tape record what she did. And so we obviously got an opportunity to study her really close up. Milton Erickson, not quite the same, not quite the same intensity, but studying his work and looking at his language. Now, here's the interesting thing that happened here. And this is the first time ever that you get a marriage between psychology and linguistics. Now, if you go back and you look at philosophy, you can go back thousands of years in the Western tradition and in the Eastern traditions, and you can find that philosophers were aware that there was a close relationship between how language and the mind work together, how language prevents the mind from understanding certain things while it enables the mind to understand other things. And there's always been a kind of a conflict here. But this is the first time, psychology is a pretty new science, first time that really this happened. You had this marriage between psychology and language. So this is Bandler's big insight and how the whole thing developed, is that he said, I think the reason these people get outstanding results, and it's important to know that all 3 of them were outstanding in their field. They got results head and shoulders above many, many other therapists at a time when there were many good therapists. Bandler studied all. He said, I think this isn't to do with what they think it is. It's to do with the language they use and the way they use it. So this got to be very interesting, that people who were quite separate and didn't particularly agree with each other's systems, had different beliefs and ideologies and different ways of working, all use the same kind of language. Now, if you study these people after a while, you'll understand what he meant by that. You can shortcut that process by simply taking an NLP course, because that understanding of language has been distilled into NLP and became one of the foundations. So he was a psychology student, he wasn't a linguist. So he took his work, he took his notes to Rick John Grinder, who was at the same university, was a professor of linguistics, and he said, what do you think? As a linguistics professor, do you think this is true? And John looked at it and said, yes. That's a short version of the story, maybe a bit longer. But as John Grinder did all the appraisal work and the peer review, but came to the conclusion that, yeah, basically these people are using the same language, and it's the way they use language that gets the results, not any of the things they think it is. So the result of that was the seminal work in NLP, which is the structure of magic. Now, any of you are serious about NLP, you should get the structure of magic and you should read it cover to cover at least once. Because that is the seminal work, that's the original thesis, and everything else came from the structure of magic. It's called the structure of magic because linguistics is concerned with structures, especially the kind of linguistics that Grinder was using. It's called generative linguistics. And also because all of the basic ideas and ways of working are there, right there in that original work. So it's well worth knowing about. Now, so that was then, and that was how it was all created. Now I'm going to jump fast forward here to the current situation because things have changed a lot. So that was back in the 70s, and Richard and John worked together very intensely, very closely for many years. And then eventually they began to have some differences of opinion about how they should proceed. Now, I think you'll find that this seems to be organic. You know, anywhere you look in life, it doesn't matter if it's business or if it's spirituality or if it's psychology, any field you look in, you will find that people have certain ideas and which they agree on, and there'll be one school, one way of doing things, and then after a while, what happens? People start to have different ideas, and it will divide into 2 schools or approaches, and then 3, and then 4, and then 10. Well, interestingly, this is what happens in nature as well, because that's how cells reproduce. So you will find that that's the way we all got to be here, is you start off with 1 cell, then it becomes 2, and then it keeps dividing and dividing until there are billions of cells, and we call that a human being. So you'll find that this is a kind of organic, natural process. Although it produces human beings, and that's generally a good thing, you'll find it's often not such a good thing in other fields, because then you get all the different ideas about what's right and wrong, and what's good and bad, and how you should do things. So they went their separate ways. Now, we do know they had they started to have disagreements about certain things, but I don't think those disagreements were that big. So really why that happened, I don't know. Neither of them say too much about it. One of the things that you can see, you can read, or you can hear, you go back to the early transcripts or the early recordings, and one of the things seemed to be that they did seem to have a slight difference of opinion about the existence of hypnosis, the state of what we call hypnosis, and how that should be related to and how it should be used. But, you know, there's a PhD in that there for somebody, you know, somebody who wants to go and spend 5 years finding out what that was, and they can get funding. That would be a fine thing. Please tell me what conclusions you come to. In the meantime, there's work to do with human beings. So what you'll find nowadays is that there are many different organizations and schools and associations, and many of these people don't even acknowledge the founders. So we always do for everything. They don't even acknowledge that there was a John Grinder and Richard Bandler. They just pretend they've created it themselves. Some of them are good, some of them stay close to the originals, you know, and they stay close to the original information, and some of them are all over the place. So you'll find if you go online, just like anything nowadays, you'll find, you know, thousands of variations on everything. We always recommend people, when you take our course, what we recommend you do is you do not Google for 7 days. You can Google other stuff, you can Google recipes and things, but we recommend that you really stay away from Googling anything to do with NLP, just until the 7 days are over. This doesn't mean we think, you know, we've got the stone tablets that came down from the mountain. You know, we don't think we're the ultimate in truth or anything, but we do think we've got more or less the original. And so it's best to just, you know, get that clear, like anything, get that clear. It's like if you're learning anything, you know, you're learning a language, it's good to get the basics clear before you go off and try to have complicated conversations. So that's the situation now. We work directly with Dr. Richard Bandler, who continues to run the original Society of NLP. This is Richard over here on the right. Now you can tell that this photograph was taken in the past because it's in sepia. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the past was in sepia and sometimes black and white. He continues to run the original Society of NLP. John Grinder does his own thing. I'll give you a little rundown on how that developed. Now we like to say when we're doing this live, which has been most of our lives so far until very recently, but when we're doing this live, we like to say to people, pay close attention because we'll test you after, and that gets people, very worried. But we're not even going to say that now because we can't really test you under these conditions. But here's the deal. This is basically what happened. Basic map. Let me tell you this so that we like to give people an overview, context in which to understand information. Because we all know nowadays there's a thing called semantic memory, which means you remember things better, and what's more important, you understand things better when you have a lot of associations. The more associations you have, the bigger the context, the more meaningful that information is to you. So this is one of your bonuses for being on this webinar this evening. So in the beginning, we had Bandler and Grinder, and they created NLP. Now then what happened is after a while, when they separated, Grinder slightly changed what he teaches, and he calls it New Code NLP. This is a bit where we ask you to start taking notes. New Code NLP, okay? Now Grinder then refers to Classic Code NLP. So if you are Googling between now and taking the course, and you come across these terms, you'll understand what they mean. And you can have clarity instead of confusion. Always a good idea. Now Bandler got together with somebody called John Lavelle, and John Lavelle and he have continued to teach that original NLP, but they call that pure NLP, okay? Now, pure NLP is the original NLP, and, oh, there's an arrow missing. We should have an arrow. Oh, no, it's up there, right, okay. I think I might change this, and I might put this arrow down here, it might make more sense. But Grinder calls the original NLP, the pure NLP, Classic Code NLP. So why did we decide to go with Bandler, not Grinder? Couldn't go with both, had to make a choice. We like to go to the originals whenever we can with anything new that we learn. And we also always give our lineage, tell you where things came from. We went to Bandler because, as far as we could tell, he was the original, we did the very earliest first research. And we also went with Bandler because John Grinder, we think, you have to come to your own conclusions about this, said something rather odd that doesn't quite make sense. And this is what it was, and you could find this online. He said that what had happened is that although NLP was created to break people out of their straitjackets of thinking and feeling, to give them new ways of understanding, that what happened is some people, after they learned NLP, after a while, NLP became the new straitjacket. It became the new thing, and they were just sort of stuck in that way of thinking and feeling. You may have seen this with other things. You often find people do this. They come across something new, and for a while, the something new really helps them to be original and to be creative and have more understanding. After a while, it just becomes an obstacle. So we do know this is a psychological phenomenon. It's a routine people get into. Now, you may have found this in jobs. You start with a new job, you've got all sorts of great ideas, and you do all that. After a while, what do? You just go in, you go through the routine every day. There's no more creativity. There's nothing original going on. Teachers do this. Teachers do this every day of their lives. Politicians do it. Doctors do it. They start off with a clear intention to do things in a good new way and to really help people. But after they've been at it for a while, it's a routine. So this is what Grinder said had happened. And he said he would create a new kind of NLP that made this impossible. Stay with me on this. This is an important point. If you want to develop your ability to think logically and to think critically, this is an important point that goes beyond NLP. So reason with me here. So he said, I'll create a new kind of NLP which doesn't allow people to do that. So then he created this new kind of NLP, new code. He taught it to people, at least hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I'm not sure. And then after a while of teaching it, he said, you know what's happened? People have turned even this new code NLP into a routine. And now they're trapped in, he calls it a ritual. But, I'm avoiding that word, it has religious connotations. They've turned it into this routine, this ritual, and that's it. They're just stuck like they were with the old NLP. Well, if you followed the logic through here, you may have noticed something, which is that if you have created something that that you created it to do something. Well, if you're now saying it doesn't do that thing, well then it wasn't what you said it was. Got that? So you can think about this at your leisure if you like. But you created a machine. Let's say everybody was doing A and then they started doing B. So you created a machine that would stop them from doing B and force them to go back and do A. And then after you've been running the machine for a while, you say, you know what, they're just doing B again. You know, this is like, you know, we found a system for making free energy, for free electricity. But you know what, after 3 months of using it, we're going to have to charge you. So, well then, your first statement was not a true statement. You go back to logic, you know, worth having a look at logic, it's an interesting topic. Go back to the logic, your statement was not true. So that's why we decided to, and the fact we call this your dogma running into your karma. You know, you can have theories and you can have ideas about things. There's a certain point where those theories and ideas will bump into reality, will bump into how things actually are. At that point, it's a good idea to reappraise and check what you're doing. So what does NLP mean? Because people often ask this question. If somebody's unmuted their microphone, would you mind muting it? We can have questions and answers and discussions at the end, but write your notes down and stuff. I'm not looking in the chat window, by the way, because we want to pay attention to this. So we can do that stuff at the end, but in the meantime, just to avoid the, you know, the interference. Thank you. Okay, so what does it mean? So this is a story that Richard Bandler loves to tell. And he loves telling stories, and we all learn to tell stories in NLP, because by telling stories, when you tell somebody a story, the 5-year-old that lives deep inside them listens. And that 5-year-old is what we call the subconscious mind. That's why everybody loves stories. That's why you love movies and you love theatre and you love novels. We all love a story. The story talks to a deeper part of us. So this is one of his stories. He says he was stopped by a cop for speeding. And usually I like to check with people. Doesn't work so well online, but I usually like to check with people if you've ever been stopped by a cop for speeding in the USA. I have. And if you have, it can be quite scary because they tend to either pull their gun or stand there with their hand on their gun. You know, that seems to be quite a hobby in America, you know, while they interview you about why you were going so fast. So I've had that experience, so I can sympathize with Richard. And also you have to think this was the 70s. And the 70s, as well as being a time in California for, you know, great growth in psychology and new ideas, it was also a time where thousands of students and young people were rebelling against the system. It was a time when you had riots and where you had big parts of the population went and burnt down sections of cities and stuff. Fascinating, like they are now. In fact, it's quite similar to what's starting to happen now in the USA, but without the intellectual foment, you know. If you could get the intellectual aspect back as well as the riots and the burning things, that would be nice. Anyway, if you think of all that, they, you know, just at that time, they'd called in the National Guard to the campus of Berkeley University, and they had actually shot some students. We're not talking about Russia or China here. We're not talking about a repressive regime. We're talking about supposedly the most democratic country in the world that got to the point where they were shooting their own students. Now, so if that was happening, imagine what it was like to tell a cop that you were a student. Okay, so Richard Bandler didn't really want to say, I am a student, when the guy asked him what his profession was. So this is how he tells us, and he had very long hair and, you know, all these things were going on. So he looked at the floor of the car and he saw a bunch of books about different things. Now, if any of you are eclectic readers, and if you're not, I recommend you become an eclectic reader immediately after this webinar, because you'll learn a lot more, a lot faster, if you read 5 books simultaneously at random than if you read 1 book at a time. And that's again because of semantic memory. It's another bonus tip for this evening. Stop reading 1 book at a time. Get 5 books on totally different subjects and read a bit of one, a bit of another one, and a bit of another one, and keep moving from one to the other. This is what your teachers probably told you not to do. The teachers were wrong. It's one of the best ways of learning. You will make connections between history and psychology and spirituality and spaceflight that would never have occurred to you in a million years unless you did this. I do it all the time. I've always got at least 10 books on the go. And Kindle makes that really easy. Just do an ad for Kindle now. Get a Kindle now. There you go. Now, so he looked at these books on the floor and they were on psychology, linguistics and computing. So being a fast thinker, which he is, He said, I'm a neuro-linguistic programmer. Now, he made up a profession on the spot. Now, the good thing about this was the cop probably didn't have a university education. I think most don't. No reason why they need them. I won't go into any details with things being as they are at the moment in the States. But so the cops thought that was really clever. You know, it's got a lot of syllables. The cop thought that was fine. Okay, he's a neuro-linguistic programmer. Let's leave it at that. And so he let him go on his way. So that's Richard's story. And I've no idea if it's true. It might just be one of his stories that he likes to tell to get people to think in a new way, which is one of the things we like to do with NLP. Because if you stop and think about that story, it actually conveys a lot of information. Never mind the story, what else does it suggest to you might be possible? One of the things it suggests to you that might be possible is you can think really fast and get yourself out of a tricky situation. That's one of the lessons in the story, or one of the morals. Another thing that it suggests to you is that you can actually blend subjects, topics, areas of study and research that have not been blended before. It also suggests that you can influence people in a certain way. So all of that is in that story. Now, here's what it really means. We're going to go into the technicalities. Now, if you know anything about English, you'll know that English and all European languages, when they want to sound clever, they take words from an old language that nobody speaks anymore. They actually take from two languages. They take from ancient Greek and they take from Latin. And that's because these are the two foundations of all European civilization, East and West. And that's subsequently gone on to be Australia and New Zealand and many other places in the world. So we go back to, that's why you have these funny words. So we go back to neuro. What does neuro mean? It relates to the brain usually. You hear about neuroscientists, neurobiologists, neurochemicals, neurotransmitters. But we use it in a broader sense. We use it to mean the entire nervous system. And we do that because if you actually look at the brain and the nervous system, they're not two separate things. They're completely one thing. That's why if you burn your finger, you experience it instantly. It doesn't take, you know, like a day to get the news from your finger to your brain. And that's because it's one complete system. And so it's like that. It's probably the speed of light. It's conveyed by electricity. Electricity, as we know, is a form of light. So it's probably, I don't know if anyone's measured this, but that's how fast it is. Now, this is important because that's what we work with in neuro-linguistic programming. Why the word's in there. So we're also concerned with, that's the neurological system, plus information is going to be received and processed through your five senses using that system. And that's because that's the only system we have. It's the only way you're going to get information in and out, and you're going to get things to happen with that information when it's inside. Linguistic, really important, because language, this may be sort of, some of these complex, some of these ideas, these concepts are actually very, very simple. They may seem a bit complex at first. I don't know how people are receiving it because I can't see your faces. If I could see your faces, I could tell by your expressions. That's another thing we do in NLP. We learn to read expressions. I'd be able to tell how you were responding. But language is everything. You are born into a language. You know, we talk about learning a language. That's not really what happens. You were born into it. Whatever language you were born into, it had already been there for thousands of years before you arrived. So all the concepts, ways of thinking, ways of dealing with things and so on were already there, and you took those on board. So the existing language really programs us. It really determines how we're going to think and feel. I mean, in many languages, for instance, many words are either masculine or feminine, which means that it's programmed into you from before you even learn a language. As soon as you start to learn it, you start to learn about gender differences. And that becomes an innate part of you. Luckily, we don't have that in English. There are so many things wrong with English, tons of things wrong with English when you look at it. Like its spelling is a disaster. And it's not phonetic, but at least it doesn't have gender discrimination. You know, that's one of the things we can say about the English language. But that's just one of many ways in which language programs us as soon as we get into it. Now, when we say language, it says language and non-verbal communication systems. Everything's a language. The way people look at you is a language. The way they move is a language. The way they sit is a language. The kind of food they eat is a language. In the sense that everything tells you something. Everything communicates information. One of the things we say in NLP is you can't not communicate. So you're always communicating whether you like it or not. And as a result of that, you're always influencing people because communication influences people. Some people say, oh, I don't want to manipulate other people. Well, you are. Simply by existing, you are. And there's nothing you can do about that. One of the things we suggest to in people learning NLP is that you learn how that process of influencing and manipulation works. And then not only can you help to free yourself from other people's manipulation of you, but you can also learn how to manipulate other people in a good way. Call it influencing, if you like that word. It's the same process. It's the process by which people are affected, by which their behavior, their thinking and feeling is changed. And it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable as the leaves will rustle when the wind blows. Finally, programming. This is the computer aspect. The ability to organize our communication and neurological systems to achieve specific desired goals and results. Okay, that's a mouthful. There's a lot of long words there. But what we're saying is, everything that we know how to do, everything from the simplest things, to speak a second or third language, to get a PhD in psychology, to make a cup of tea, to relate to our friends or parents or whoever, everything that we know how to do has been organized within our neurology, has been organized biochemically. Certain chemicals have to take place. It's been organized electrically. Certain impulses have to go from your brain to your body and back again. It's been organized in terms of movement and language in the ways that we talked about before. The only thing is, most of that has happened unconsciously. Now, if you know even a little bit about psychology, psychologists and neuroscientists nowadays generally say your brain or mind is approximately 95% unconscious. So that means we're running on programs that are already inside us. Not a new idea, this is in other systems too. However, what's new in NLP is the idea that it's possible to become aware of the structure, and the structure's key here, the structure of that process inside our own mind so that we can change it in a way that works. So that's why people often say it's the number one system for excellence and things like that, which to me sounds quite meaningless. But it is true that people have used NLP to do just about, and continue to do just about anything you can think of. Doctors use it to enhance their medical practice. Psychologists use it to enhance their psychological practice. Salespeople make more sales. Managers manage people better. Teachers teach better. There is no area of human endeavor which cannot be enhanced and improved and empowered by NLP knowledge and skills. Now, people often don't know the difference, and there's no reason why you would, between NLP and therapy. And of course, many therapists use NLP techniques, and many NLP practitioners will use some therapy. And many people who learn both have never been told there's a difference anyway. So there's a whole kind of mishmash. This is a characteristic of our time, I think. The fact that we have the internet, the fact that anybody can find out anything in 10 minutes, means that there's often not a clear distinction there about things. So just to make it clear, because also NLP and therapy will address some of the same issues. If somebody has, let's say, a phobia about spiders or dogs or snakes or clowns, there are people who are phobic about clowns, believe it or not. There's actually, if you ever see the list of phobias, it's unbelievable. It's over 300, maybe more, so I haven't looked for a while, but it's at least 300 phobias. I mean, more or less anything. If you just make up something now, if you say fingers, you'll find there's somebody who has a phobia of fingers. You know, shoes. There's somebody with a phobia. It's incredible. But again, this is because our minds do work in this automatic way, and any old program can get dumped on you when you're not looking, often within the first 5 years. So you just get all the stuff your parents had and friends had and teachers had and so on. You get all that dumped on you, all that negative stuff. Sure, you get the good stuff, but you get the bad stuff as well. So here's the difference. Somebody may have, let's say, a phobia of spiders. Now, they could seek therapy to get beyond that, or they could seek NLP, or they might even seek both. So here's a difference, just so you know how to make the distinction. It says therapy here, but obviously this is hypnotherapy. Clearly, this picture, somebody is hypnotizing somebody else. I think that's quite obvious. So we chose it especially for that reason. Old-fashioned idea of hypnosis. Now, therapy asks why. So therapy will say, why are you phobic about spiders? And the answer to why is always the same, and I'm sure you know what it is. It's because. You know, that is the answer to why, isn't it? You know, somebody says, why are you here? You say, because I want to hear about NLP. Why are you eating pistachios? They taste great. Why have you switched the light on? So I can see, dummy. There's always, because always follows why. It has to. Some languages, it's the same word. They just say it with or without a question. So therapy asks why. We want to know the reason in therapy. And once we know the reason, then we'll use some technique to get you to understand that and that it no longer applies to you. Okay, why? Because and often these memories are buried, they're forgotten, they're repressed or suppressed, and then we can use various techniques, including things like hypnotherapy, to get that memory to come back. And then you can deal with the memory. Well, it may have made sense to be terrified of, let's say, I was going to say a spider, but you know, it never makes sense to be terrified of a spider unless you live in Australia or somewhere where they have really serious spiders. But you know, let's say you did. It may have made sense to be terrified of a spider at 5 years old. It doesn't when you're 30. It makes sense to be wary of spiders, to be alert of spiders if you live in Australia. But it doesn't make sense to be terrified anymore because as a 30-year-old you can deal with it. So that's what we do in therapy. We ask why. Now, the fundamental difference in NLP is that we ask how. So we simply want to know how something works. How do you make yourself afraid of spiders? And the reason we want to know that is because in NLP, we look at internal representations. Now, again, a couple of long words there, but every single one of us runs a movie in our brain that enables us to understand things and to relate to things and take actions. We all do that. In order for you to make a cup of tea, you have to have an image of a cup of tea and an image of the process of how you make it. You've got to have emotions about it. If you don't have emotions, you can never make tea. There has to be an emotion there. If somebody doesn't like tea, you've still got emotions. That's how you avoid it. Bad emotions tell you what to avoid. The good emotions tell you what to go for. So you have to have a picture, and then you usually have to have sounds. So you have to have a whole structure internally. Now, one of the things we teach you on the NLP course is how to become aware of these structures, how they're put together, and to change them. Because we can do this, we do this routinely when it comes to phobias. I can fix anybody's phobia in about 15 minutes. If it's a tough case, it might take 20 minutes to half an hour. And we've got we've got a couple of videos of showing people how to do this. And we've done this years and years again and again. And I'm saying me, that's not because I have something special about me. Anybody who learns NLP can fix a phobia. And one of the best ways of testing whether you've understood NLP and can use it well is to go fix somebody's phobia. It's incredibly simple. It's just like it's like painting by numbers, if you've ever done that. You know, you get these, I don't know if you've ever seen painting by numbers. You get a picture, it's just white, it's just a white background, and it's got all the outlines are there, and it's got a number in each outline. And then you have a little list. And on the list, it tells you which colour for which number. Can somebody mute their mic again, please? You get some interference. Yeah, I can hear somebody talk about children. Whoever's got the mic on, can they just mute the mic, please? Yeah, whoever that person is. Yeah, that person. Who is that? Okay, so please grips for that one as soon as you can. So we ask how. So we want to know, if you're depressed, what collection of pictures and thoughts and feelings do you run through your mind in what way to come up with what you call depression? If you have a phobia, what collection of pictures and feelings and sounds do you run through your mind? Now, this is often a new idea for people because we often don't think about things in that way. But once you get the idea, it's extremely simple, extremely effective, and you can use it for anything. This really is one size fits all.
I want to understand guilt. Is all I know exactly.
Now, I think it's Andrea. Andrea, we need you to mute your mic. Okay, right, I've muted it for you. Okay, there's a couple of key concepts it's worth thinking about. NLP has a set of presuppositions. Presuppositions are basic ideas. They're what maybe some people in some systems would call maxims or axioms. They're things that we take to be kind of basic truths, basic facts. They're not ultimate truths like, you know, the existence of God or love or anything. They're simply more powerful ways of thinking about things. There's 8 of those. You will find if you look at some other NLP systems, they've got 10, 20, 15, 18, and we say that's rubbish. Because what they normally do is they take the 8 and they double them. You know, they split them all in half, and then they can make it look like they've got more. They can make it look like doing something different, so it'd be harder for Richard to take them to court. You know, various motives. But there are 8, trust me. If once you've learned this stuff, if you can find 9, tell me. Because, you know, you really have to demonstrate that it means something. There are 2 main language models. This is really key. It's called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. There's a reason for that. It's because it uses language in a specific way. One of the things we said to John Laval when we were first learning stuff and learning to be trainers is we said we would really like to put the language back in NLP, put the L back in NLP. And he said, yes, I wish somebody would. Because one of the things is that people often, when people teach NLP, they kind of miss it out or they don't do it in much detail. And I think the reason is that they haven't understood it well. Because if you don't understand it, how are you going to teach it? And we have been on courses as students where the teachers of NLP, the instructors, have just kind of glossed over it. You know, so this is very important. As a meta model is used to analyze language to find out what the language actually means. Because, you know, when you say love and somebody else says love, it probably doesn't mean exactly the same thing. And that's one of the reasons there's so many divorces. If people would just check that out, you know, from the beginning, you know, when somebody says, oh, I love you, they should really say, exactly what do you mean when you say I love you? And they shouldn't really go any further until they've got a really clear, precise definition, you know. But usually people don't do that. They just get all carried away emotionally. They get married, and then 10 years later and 3 children later and a mortgage, they realise that actually they have completely different ideas. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, you know. Sometimes it's just like you end up with the wrong ice cream, you know, or something like that. Or you end up on studying the wrong course or something. But meta model is for analysing language. If you analyse language, look at this at the moment, you'll find with the COVID stuff going on, we're always being told that experts have said something or other. Please tell us the expert's name. Please tell us the university. Please tell us who funds them. Don't just tell me it's an expert. I don't buy it. Tell me, who is the expert? What are they an expert in? I could tell you a lot about this. That's another story. Anyway, Milton, look for something online called 3 Realities or 3 R's. I don't know more about that. The Milton model is a language model for influencing people, for getting people to move in a better direction. Now, as a teacher, as a therapist, as a coach, as a counsellor, as a manager, this is a key skill. It makes it so, as a parent as well, makes it so much easier to get the results you want, to get the results that are good for people. We're not doing it so we can do something bad to them, to get the results that are good for them by influencing them. I mean, some of these things are incredibly simple. If you have a child and you say to the child, what would you like for dinner? You've got a fair chance they're going to come up with junk food if they live in this, you know, current society. If, however, you say to them, would you like peas or beans? You've got a very good chance they're going to choose peas or beans. And you will find this happens a lot in sales. You know, they'll say to you, do you want to pay by check or cash? And somewhere in the back of your mind, something saying, I don't remember saying I wanted to buy it, but your hand is already going for your wallet, you know? So that's like one of the simplest examples. We have a lot more subtle stuff than that in NLP, but some of the crudest aspects of NLP have gone into sales a long time ago, and many salesmen use them. Again, if you learn some of this stuff, you can then protect yourself. This is linguistic self-defense. You can protect yourself from experts, from scientists, from doctors, from politicians, from many, many people, and from salespeople. The thing about salespeople I like is at least they're honest, like, you know, in the sense that they're there to sell you something. Not true of those other professions I mentioned. Okay, and another key idea is that there's a process of change. You know, there are certain beliefs that we have that are good when they're good, they're bad when they're bad. The good ones move us forward, the bad ones hold us back. And that there are states. For everything you believe, there is a state. So if you believe that there is such a thing as love, and that love is this wonderful thing that can completely transform your life, you will have a transformed state that will go along with the word love. And when you invoke that state, when you fall in love, or when you experience love, or sometimes even if you just think about love, you can go into that other state. That's what we would call a resourceful state. Now, we call it a state, we don't just call it an emotion, because for you to have an emotion, you also have to have thoughts, chemical responses in your body, bioelectrical impulses, certain way of moving your body and holding your body, All of these things happen simultaneously. Not one of them. Nobody ever has a feeling all by itself. It's impossible. Nobody ever has a thought all by itself. We are holistic. I hate that word, but we are complete beings. And so everything works together. So that's what we want to work with in NLP. How do we change states? How do we get rid of unresourceful states, negative states, and how do we induce good ones? Now, I know there are lots of people already teaching all sorts of ways of doing this stuff, and many of those ways are good, and you can do those as well as NLP. Some of those ways aren't as good as they could be. So here's a couple of presuppositions in NLP. Now, again, when we do the live stuff, we do live introductions, we have big discussions about these things. We can't do that now, but I can give you an idea, because I told you about the presuppositions and what they are. We say some ways of thinking are more powerful than others. The crude example of that, simplistic example, is if you think you can't do something, then you won't even try, will you? And you see this all the time. And when you think you can't do something, you always can't do it because of a reason. That's what we call a cause and effect pattern, one of the linguistic patterns in NLP. So you'll meet somebody and you'll say, you know, I did a parachute jump last week and it was incredible, changed my life. I was so inspired, and plus that my asthma disappeared. You know, I don't know why, but I mean, it just disappeared and hasn't come back. Why don't you do one? You might find it really brilliant as well. And they say to you, I can't. And you say to them, why not? And they say, because I'm too old, because I'm too young, because I'm a woman, because I can't afford it, because I don't have the time, because blah, 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 because I have asthma. Because. Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? Say the old movie, The Wizard of Oz. It's a very old film, it's a very good film, but they have a song in that where everybody sings because. Highlighting exactly this. This was before NLP, they made that film, but highlighting exactly that issue. We always have a reason why we can't do things. So that's, you know, part of the issues that we address. I mean, sometimes it may be true that we really can't, but a big percentage of the time we could. But if you have the thought you can't, then you won't even try. You won't make the attempt, you won't even find out. Can't afford it. Well, maybe you could find a way to make money, you know, and then that's where we get into coaching. It's reverse engineering, you know, so maybe you could get somebody to give it to you for free. Maybe you could, you know, maybe you could do a favor for somebody and they do it for you in return. You know, maybe. Instead of because. So these are some of the elements of NLP. Now, like I said, we can't go into all this stuff in detail, but let's just have a look at a couple of them. The meaning of the communication is in the response you get, number 2. Now, I often like to change the word meaning to the value of the communication, just to make it more clear. This is really key. If you are anybody who communicates with people and wants to get results, and I guess that's everybody, whenever we communicate, we want a result, don't we? Not just kind of passing time, you know, you want something to happen. Whether it's your child or your student or your employee or your boss or whoever it is, how they respond to you is the value of what you just did, or the meaning of what you just did. Now, bad teachers and bad managers do this all the time. They say, oh, you're too stupid, or you're too lazy, or you didn't listen, or you're not paying attention, or you're not educated enough, because. So they come up with all these reasons why the person didn't understand what they wanted them to understand. And what we say is it's exactly the opposite. If they didn't understand, it's your problem, not theirs. If they didn't understand, it's up to you to find a way to get them to understand. Could you do that? Could you get more creative about the way you communicate? I wonder if that's possible. Wouldn't that be interesting if we could actually do that? So that really changes things once we have that attitude. Now, the thing that's key about these presuppositions is that what we found, and when I say we, I mean everybody who's done this stuff since right back in the 70s, is that when you change the belief, you change the attitude, and the behavior changes, and then you get new results. So you find you can communicate with that kid for as long as you just, let's say you're a teacher and the kid has trouble reading and writing, and you've got a nice convenient label that says they're dyslexic, and so you don't try anymore. Just suppose you dump the label and you start to get new ideas and you communicate with that child as an individual. Maybe you'll find there's a way, and many people have. So the value of that communication is how they respond to you, and it's your responsibility. If you ever want to develop and get better, it's your responsibility to find a better way to communicate. That's that. Now that can change everything. A doctor who can communicate better with a patient has more of a chance of helping them. A manager who can communicate better with their employees or their team has a better chance of getting the results they want, making the company more effective, making more money, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and I'm just going to look at just one other one. It's so difficult to choose because I often say one of these is my favourite, but actually they're all my favourites. But this one I do like a lot. The map is not the territory. The map is not the territory means this, and I touched on this right at the beginning in order to prime us all for understanding this concept in case it was new. It means this. Neuroscientists have been telling us for some time now that we do not experience reality. Now, if you haven't looked into any of this, this might be a new idea. But if you've ever studied philosophy, every philosopher has been saying this for the last 3,000 years, East and West. And since then, psychologists have said it, and more recently, neuroscientists have said it, because now they can prove it by doing brain scans and so on. You don't experience reality. This is true in even the simplest ways. Like, you can hear my voice now and you can understand it. You're not actually hearing my voice. What's happening in your ear is that when I speak, sound waves are created. But those sound waves somehow, because they have to go through Zoom now as well, because we're not in the same room, somehow they get to your ear. Your ear is shaped to trap them. They go inside your ear. In your ear, there's a little thing like this. And there's a little sort of pad, like a little drum. It's even called a tympanum, which is Latin for drum. And then there's this little drumstick. And as those sound vibrations hit this area, it goes like this. Now, how on earth does that end up, you understanding me talking about these concepts? Tell me that. Somebody explain that to me, please. Because this is mind-bogglingly miraculous when you think about it, and yet we all take it for granted. It's happening every moment that we communicate with anybody. So why we say the map is not the territory, because on your map, you hear people. Out in the territory, that's meaningless. In the territory, what happens is it's a really complex process. Now, that's kind of what we call chunking up. That's looking at it, looking at the whole big picture and looking at the details. But think about this. When you meet somebody, you form an image of them. You form an impression of them based on all your other experiences that you've ever had. So from now on, you think you're relating to Jim or Mohammed or whoever it may be. You're not really. You're relating to your idea of Jim or Mohammed. And this is true of absolutely everything that you experience in life. We don't relate to reality outside of us because we can't. Now, that's not to say you can't make it work, you can't really communicate with people, and we're not saying they're not really there, none of that sort of nonsense. We're simply saying that it's the representation in our own brains that is the way that we make judgments about how people are and how things work and so on. And so once we understand that, and we also understand the way that we make those judgments, we make those structures, once again, hey presto, we can change them.
So I will do 3500, just keep 500 in the pocket, rest to use.
Got somebody with the mic on again? Who is that person? Who am I going to mute here? Just searching for that. Searching for the person. Okay, gone. Okay, ask me questions at the end, please. So, map is not the territory. So, that's just one of them because we don't have time for all of them. Okay, now what I'm going to do, look into these things yourself, please. What we're going to do now is we're going to just have Layla come in and she's going to take the next session. This is the way we've always liked to do it live as well. Just take the next part of the session and just go into some information about how the mind works. And I'll be back after that.
Fine. Okay. I didn't want to cut short what Phil was doing if he needed a few more minutes with you, but that's fine. Okay, so to just pick up from where Phil's been going through some of the principles of NLP and talking you through a couple of the presuppositions of NLP, each one of which is really important, but I guess he's picked up a couple. Which ones did he look at with you today? I think I heard him say the map is not the territory at the end. Any others he covered? What other presuppositions did Phil cover?
He also talked about the meaning of the communication is in the response that you get.
Oh, great. Okay, fine. I mean, they're all really powerful. I have some favorites too. One of my favorites is feedback and not failure. I always say, especially in teaching work and work where you're you're having to develop people, empower them, and so on, that to me the real F word is not the swear word, but is the other F word, which is failure. So we give feedback and not failure. So onto the section that I want to talk about is some basic principles about how the mind works that underpin NLP, and in general are found to be the principles in positive psychology, which nowadays is backed up by neurology. So the great thing is it's not just about psychological models, theories, but is actually based on observation of how the mind works and how the brain works specifically. So what I'm going to suggest here is that we take some working premises. Now, what I mean by that is that in NLP, we like to talk about cultivating opinions and basing our way of working on what we know works, rather than getting bogged down in belief systems. Because, you know, you might have a belief about how the world works. You might have had a belief once upon a time the world is flat. You may have certain beliefs about sickness or about illness, about how germs work. And the problem is that if those beliefs get in the way of you actually seeing what's really going on, what we call, sometimes is referred to as confirmation bias, if you believe something so much so that you actually screen out all the evidence to the contrary, then it's very hard to actually make changes, to find out if there are other ways of working. So I'm not going to suggest that you take this as a new religion or anything, but it's about how do you actually make things work. And these working premises I'm going to run through with you are ones that seem to be pretty well tried and tested. If we find out other better ways of doing them, then we'll adopt those. So these are the working premises we use. There are two main levels of consciousness, what we refer to as the waking consciousness, or the editor. If you like, in a newspaper, the editor decides on what's the editorial policy, what's our sort of political stand, what's our audience, our market, who are we aiming, what we're doing at. And so it's a policy, it's a strategic role. Then we have the subconscious robot, if you like, which is everything else that's not in your conscious cognitive awareness at any one time. So that incorporates the autonomic nervous system, you know, the part that knows how to breathe, how to do all the physical functions of the body. You don't need to teach it that, but also we do teach a lot of things that we learn consciously. So for example, learning to ride a bike, learning to walk, learning to talk. I often say to people, you've already done the most important and powerful things you're ever going to do in your life by the time you get to about 3 or 4. That's to say you've learned to walk and you've already got the basics of talking in place. So anything else, quite frankly, after that is pretty easy. But things like tying your shoelaces, things like walking up and down stairs, once you've got a model for how you do something, you do it a few times over. In psychology, we talk about the fact that it takes about 21 repetitions to build a simple habit. So once you've done something a few times over, you need to be conscious of doing that. When you're going to somewhere you don't know and you have to follow a map or a GPS system and perhaps it's not working and you're reading directions as well and you're looking out, you're very conscious at that time. But once you know that place and it's become part of your run, you know, place you work or you pick the kids up from school or a favorite cafe or something, you really don't need to think about that because now you have a program, right, running automatically in your mind. So you arrive sometimes you don't even remember how you got there. You were busy thinking about something else. So we're referring to all of that, memories, learned habits and behaviors, sensory processing, everything else is basically below the level of conscious awareness. We're going to refer to that as the subconscious, or you might say the unconscious. Those terms are pretty much interchangeable. Now in NLP, we don't get into the concept of superconscious or the sixth sense or anything. You can add those into the mix if you will. But in NLP, we talk about purely the conscious mind and the subconscious or unconscious mind. So as I said, subconscious is running all those automatic programs, the autonomic nervous system, sometimes referred to as the ANS, physical survival, and that's as it should be. When it comes to physical survival, you do not want, when that predator jumps out at you, you do not want to run a decision tree analysis. Those of you who studied management or MBAs, you know, what are the pros and cons? If this happens, what about that? If in that moment your survival depends on it, you want your automatic survival response to kick in. That's fine. The other premise of this model is that the subconscious maintains a record of all experiences, everything that's ever happened to you. And of course, as Phil was probably talking about to you before, NLP looks at sensory information. We take things in through our senses. That's how we get information. We have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, feeling, and that's on the outside and also on the inside, emotional feeling too. We have the same word in English that we use for both. And also we have olfactory and gustatory, and I'll touch on those a bit afterwards. So all the senses are constantly taking in information and they're storing that. And the subconscious doesn't store information in an A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3 binary way. The subconscious stores information by experience, by emotion, by feeling, and therefore it's not the same as a library where you go and look in the Dewey Decimal System and see where you look up a particular book. It stores it according to the emotional tenor of the experience, whether it was scary, whether it was a happy, whether there was color in it, what sound was associated with it. So for example, you've probably heard a piece of music, say, that goes way back to the past, you know, and oh, darling, they're playing our song, and a whole bunch of nostalgic memories goes along with that. It's triggered by that musical sound, but it's all stored in there at a sensory level. And although we talk about the brain and the mind, in NLP we say really it's the whole of your nervous system. It's not just what's up here between your ears. People talk about the brain, and they talk about it in NLP too. But when we say the mind and the brain, we're actually talking about the entire nervous system, because we know that we have cellular memory. Our memories are, you know, all throughout us. So the subconscious maintains a record of that. So when the behavior becomes learned, it starts to become an automatic function. And that's great when it comes to tying your shoelaces, or speaking a language, driving your car, all the things you don't want to have to remember day by day. The downside of it, as I'm sure you're aware, is that it also therefore runs negative programs. It runs the thought, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I've got a rubbish memory. I'm no good with names. I find it difficult to do maths. I'm just not very artistic. I can't walk. I've got a dance. I've got 2 left feet. Those sorts of things are limiting beliefs, as we refer to them in NLP. And the problem is that a lot of the time we have no idea whether they're true or not. They might have been true once upon a time. They may have been true when we were a child. They may have been true at that time when we were stressed and everyone was looking at us, but that doesn't mean that they're true for all time. So one of the things that NLP does is to actually start to make that subconscious material conscious, to actually bring up memories and to start changing the way that we represent them to ourselves. Every thought creates a physical reaction, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you shortly by just doing a little task with you all that you can do at home. And that when you think something enough, if you keep feeling and thinking a certain way, it will actually change your body. There will be a physical change over time. So hence you'll get people, and it gives me no pleasure whatsoever ever to say this, but today we actually got some news about someone that we know who's just had the diagnosis of breast cancer. And I didn't hear the conversation exactly, and I was hoping that maybe it was something else, someone else, but I had a very strong impression that it was going to be breast cancer and that that person had had that diagnosis. And sure enough, that's what had happened. This particular person, somebody who extremely negative in their thinking, is very much into blame. It's somebody else's fault. It's someone else's responsibility. Very, very difficult to get this particular person to actually have any ownership of the fact that she has any control over life. It's all about, I won't say who, but another particular person. And that, after a period of time, over a number of years and behaving like that, has actually created a certain condition. And again, you don't have to say, oh, this is victim blaming. You say it's interesting how a different mindset can produce a different response. Someone can be given the same diagnosis. I was talking earlier about health and doctors. Someone can be given one diagnosis. Someone else can be given the same one. One person will be dead within a few weeks. The other person, you'll see them several years later, and they'll tell you what they've done to overcome the condition that they had, how they didn't accept, a label on themselves, etc. I used to wonder why it was so many old people went round like this, all hunched over. And then I started to realize that didn't just happen overnight. That happened from years and years of hunching, years and years of looking down, of feeling dispirited, feeling defeated, not taking much exercise, not stretching themselves much. And after a while, the spine starts to fuse. And I'm not saying you can't change even then, but it's a lot harder to change the more you've got stuck in a certain habit. So another principle is that we can only focus on one specific emotional thought at a time. Now, what I mean by that is not that we can't dart from one thought to another, or sometimes run a variety of thoughts and do so-called multitasking. What I'm talking about is that we can only really focus, we can only really go deeply into something if we just delete everything else going on around us and focus on that particular thought. And again, that can be for good or ill, right? Because you can focus entirely on what's wrong in your life and what's wrong with you, and you never notice anything good. On the other hand, you can actually decide to delete or not focus on the things that aren't so great, focus on what it is that you do like, you are enjoying, and get a different experience from that. So this is not multitasking. NLP is kind of the opposite from that. It's saying you really need to focus and relax while you focus to allow your subconscious mind to bring things to the forefront, and then you can start to consider them without going into a state of stress or resistance. The other biggie is that imagination is powerful, and any day, if there's a competition between imagination and reason, if the emotions are involved and the imagination is powerful, it will always override reason. And this is why it's so important, super important, to actually develop ways of understanding and recognizing one's triggers. You know, we sometimes refer to hot triggers, the things that get you going, the things that get you really worked up, again, both for positive or negative. And when that happens, and I sometimes give this example, some of you who know me might have heard this before, a typical example would be that you walk into a room and from your peripheral vision, you see something coiled up in the corner and you immediately think a snake. Your emotional database, your sensory memory that we referred to earlier has immediately gone snake because it's something coiled, and you go into a state of nervous reaction. Okay? You will experience fear. And then if you look again and you see with your conscious mind, your rational mind sees it's actually just a coil of rope that's just piled up there in the corner. Okay, it's not a snake. But if you've had that really powerful fear response, that stress response, you know, the adrenaline and the noradrenaline, the cortisol's got flooding your system, even though you know consciously it's not a snake, it's a coil of rope, very often it can take some time, we refer to it as a refractory period, where you're very easily got into a state of nervousness and anxiety because you really felt that strongly. And by the way, that's how anxiety, neuroses, and complexes are born, because someone has gone into such a state that even once they recognize consciously, look, there's nothing to be worried about, their body has rehearsed that so much that they just automatically get triggered by a word that's spoken, by someone doing something, immediately puts them into that state. So if we take this emotional driving much of our behavior combined with the imagination, you can see that we can make ourselves really, really dysfunctional. And once we get hold of that, once we learn how it works, we can actually make ourselves extremely functional instead. So in terms of the power of imagination, just to reiterate, some ways of thinking about things are more powerful than other ways because they engage our imagination and emotion, and they use our senses. The images and the words that we use to represent things affects our feelings, both physical and emotional. So I say, oh, my feet are killing me. That gives me a very different feeling than if I actually say, you know, my feet are a bit sore, right? In one, I've lost it completely. I can hardly stand up. I need to put my feet in a bowl of water. I need a foot massage. I can hardly take a step further. Whereas if I actually say, I'm a bit tired, my feet are a bit sore, we feel very differently about it. And I'll give you a little classic here. When one of my daughters was much, much younger, and we were climbing, we were out walking, cliff walking in the UK, in Cornwall. And she was just little, she got very tired. Her sisters were bigger, and Phil and I were walking along. And she said, oh, I don't know, I don't think I can do this. I'm very, very tired. My feet just won't go any further. I'm very tired. And then she started getting grizzly and moany. And then I think it was Phil that said to her, just imagine that you've got a rope and just get hold of that rope, and it's a very thick, strong rope, and the rope's fixed at the top, so you can just pull yourself up on that rope. And so she started doing it because kids are great. You don't need to talk them into using their imaginations. And the next thing, she's practically running up the slope because she's using the imaginary rope to pull her up there. So again, a classic. And as I said, I'll have you do something in a moment just to see how much difference you can make by the way that you represent something to yourself, the words, the images that you use. So we can achieve physical change by thinking about things differently. And any kind of mental focus, anything you do with your mind will build a sense of energy, a physical sensation of energy in your body. So just to reiterate the fact, and Phil may or may not have mentioned this, he's probably touched on it at least, in NLP, as I said, a big emphasis on the sensory information that we take in. We also take on board the fact that the subconscious, right brain generally, and the left brain function a bit differently. And so the subconscious mind, the right brain, all the part that deals with emotions and feelings and sensory information responds very well to images, visual images, and verbal images, stories, symbols, and metaphors. So when you talk about Superman, immediately there's a picture that goes, probably with a big S on the chest and dressed with the pants on the outside of the tights. So that Superman image gives a very different feeling than if we just said, oh, somebody very strong. So bearing that in mind when it comes to using NLP, each of us processes information differently with these internal senses that we've got. So we see pictures, we hear sounds, and we feel things internally as well as externally. And people tend to have, and again, please don't get all fixated on this, like, oh, you're a visual person or you're an auditory person. Don't label people, but it's true, and we often can observe that people tend to have more dominant styles of processing. So for the example here, somebody who has a lot of visual processing, they'll do a lot of looking up, and they'll tend to do quite a bit of gesturing, and Phil will talk about eyes and eye movement after I've done this bit. So somebody who uses I see what you mean, yes, I get a clear picture of that. If you use visual language, visual metaphors, you're more likely to be in rapport with them. They're more likely to get you and you them. If you're someone or you're dealing with someone who talks about in relation to sound, yes, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, it sounds like that makes sense to me. You know, I get what you're on about. I can tell that makes sense to me. I can almost hear myself talking about that to somebody. As soon as you get that kind of language, again, you know that you've got a connection with that person. You're going to shift into the auditory way of speaking. And kinesthetically, and of course we have got smell and the other senses, the olfactory and gustatory, but mostly what people use in language is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So the kinesthetic person says, yeah, we can really crush this. Yeah, you can park that over there. Yeah, I get what you mean. I feel that that's genuine. So people using that kind of language and the gestures that go with that, again, you can get much better in rapport with them if you adjust your language, your gestures, your body language, and so on. And there's a whole art to that, which NLP goes into in some detail, so that it's quite extraordinary sometimes just how much you can find someone gets, yeah, I'm with you now, because you've used the right language and the right sort of tonality and the speed, whether they're slower at processing or faster, etc. So people have their own way, and some people are what we call metacognitive or multisensory. They jump around between all three, in which case, fine, make sure you use a combination of language in the way that you speak to them. And of course, suggestions and ideas that you give to people and the influencing side of things are far more effective when the images, the thoughts, the symbols that you use are relevant to the individual. You know, if you use lots of, say, British stories and cliches and you know, the kind of fables and myths that we all have in our cultures, with someone who doesn't come from that culture, they're not going to know what you mean. If they come from a culture with different sorts of metaphors and symbols and stories, if you use those, they're far more likely to get you. You know, if you're using the sort of language and examples that come from, say, a culture that's based on a Christian tradition, it's not going to be received in the same way as someone from a Hindu or a Muslim or a pagan tradition of some sort. If someone comes from the right or the left politically, again, be careful on the sort of language you use, because it will be received and interpreted differently according to what Phil was probably saying to you earlier on about the filters that we use to filter in and out information. So people will see and accept and hear and feel the information that fits their particular model. If it doesn't, they're likely to reject it or not hear what you're saying to them and not get on board. So I want to demonstrate to you with a particular little technique. Just make sure you've got some space around you. Most of you, I can see, look like you're on your own. So make sure that you're far enough back that you can put your arms out, and hopefully you can see me do that. If you'd like to do this with me so you can get the idea of it, so put your arms out in front of you so they're sort of parallel to the floor. You can be sitting down, you don't have to stand up for this. Okay, and now what I'd like you to do in a moment is to swivel around, and I'll do it and then you can follow me. So you can see me, I'm going to swivel around, I'm going to keep my back straight, I'm just going to turn my top half of my body, twist around to the point where I can get to where I'm pointing. In my case, I'm pointing over to some curtains, and when I get to that point, I can feel my spine starts to feel a bit stiff, a bit rigid. It's not going to go any further than that. So just do that, just twist around and notice where your arms get to and make a note of that, okay? So that's where your arms stretch around to with the capacity of your spine, just doing it cold, just like I've asked you to, okay? So come back to the front again. And now just for a moment, you can put your arms down and I'd like you to just close your eyes. And just for a moment with your eyes closed, and I only say close your eyes because then you're not distracted by looking at me or whatever's going on around you. You can just focus inside and think more clearly and focus and imagine things more clearly in your mind's eye. I'd like you to just imagine now that you're doing that same thing and you can see yourself in your mind's eye swiveling just as you did just now. But now in your mind's eye, just imagine as if your spine is no longer the spine that it was before, because it's been changed into a different sort of material. Now just see this as vividly as you can, that instead of being a spine that's made up of vertebra and bones and the cartilage between them, just imagine that that spine is made of very thick, very strong rubber. But it's definitely a rubber substance. It's a sort of a bendable substance that can be swiveled and turned around. And so it's not like an elastic band, it's not thin, it's really strong and thick, but it's very, very bendable and flexy. And now just imagine as you see yourself in your mind's eye, turning around just as you did before, but this time it's quite funny maybe, see how your arms go really much further around. And then you're not going to go all the way around and twist yourself into a knot, but just see your arms going right the way around, way further than they did before, because that spine of yours is now so flexible and rubbery. And just keep that image in your mind now, and open your eyes and bring your arms back up again in front of you, just as you did before. Just bring your arms up now, and now just swivel your arms around, all the way around, as far as they can possibly go with that rubbery spine, that bendy spine, and see where they go to now, and just notice the difference. Notice where they've gone to now, and notice where that is in relation to where they went before. Okay, and when you're ready, just come back into the room. So tell me, what happened there? A couple of people share.
Yeah, definitely my arms moved a lot farther than I thought they would. And it didn't feel like my spine didn't feel stiff, it just felt comfortable.
Right, so your spine moved. You didn't suddenly become a superwoman robot, but you were able to feel your spine shift and move around more than it did before. Anybody else got any changes between where they were the first time and the second? Anybody else like to share?
Yeah.
What happened?
The same experience. I actually have a stiff shoulder, but it was amazing. Like, I felt like Superwoman in a way.
Oh, you felt like Superwoman, did you? Okay. So sometimes you have to ground people after doing these things because you don't want them thinking they're Iron Man and they're going to go around and, or fly. But one of the reasons I prefer to do this kind of work specifically when we're actually there face to face, because it's really interesting how people can find out how, for example, if we did this exercise and instead of doing it with the arms twisting around, we can do it bending down to the floor, or we can do something where you just have one arm out and then somebody can just give a little push down, not swinging on your arm or anything, but just to test your muscular strength. And you can think the word yes, and immediately your arm will be hugely stronger and more rigid. Then you can think the word no, and immediately your arm becomes weaker, sometimes to the point where it almost flops down without any pressure. Now, why is that? It's the sort of things that we refer to as mind over matter. It's because your subconscious mind has actually got a huge range of variety and is able to do a great deal physically that you wouldn't really think that that was the case if you just think about things from a sort of a common sense point of view. Your spine has a huge range of movement, but normally it only goes to the point that you would usually let it. As soon as it has an imaginary picture, it has an image or a feeling of something, it will go way further, and it does sometimes seem like magic. And it's because you've got a huge range. As I said, I'm not suggesting that you jump off a building and you'll be able to fly, but within the range of gravity, within the range of human experience, it's amazing what your body can do. But imagine, and I'm not going to have you do this, right? But imagine I was to say to you, now imagine that your spine was made of concrete. And imagine your spine had been poured into a block that was completely rigid. Maybe you've had spinal surgery and you've had a steel bar put up the back. And so you can't swivel or turn at all. Just try and see how that is. You will actually find it's very difficult to get any movement at all. This is the power of using images, language, and metaphors in ways that empower people or restrict them and get them to feel weak. You can weaken people quite easily by certain gestures, using certain tones. You can strengthen them by doing the opposite. So of course, as NLPers, our job is to do that for ourselves. And if we become practitioners, master practitioners, and coaches, our job is to actually educate others in what they can do to empower themselves. And the other thing I'd like to say about that that's very important to remember is that your subconscious mind is not the part of your mind that makes decisions based on values, that knows what's true, what's real, what's not. Your subconscious mind runs on data, on information that comes in a sensory way. So if you imagine something really awful, sure enough, it'll make the pictures for awful and the sounds for awful and the feelings for awful, and it will produce the negative chemicals in your body. If you make the pictures of something happy, something good, something enjoyable, something funny, it will make exactly those chemicals, those changes that go with that, which is why it's absolutely ridiculous if anyone ever tells you, oh, somebody's mentally ill because of the brain chemistry imbalance. What we know about that now, as I said, this is a scientific fact, it's not just opinion, is that as soon as you start thinking about something that you enjoy, that makes you feel good, you change your brain chemistry immediately. And this is why in positive psychology, including NLP, the practices that we recommend people do on a daily basis actually prime them for happiness, for well-being, for success, will actually boost their immune system, will actually help them to get over any physical challenges, emotional challenges, mental challenges, but it's a question of building the habit so that that's your go-to. I sometimes describe it as those Weeble dolls, you know, that you give kids and that you push them over and they just bounce up again. That's what happens by changing the habits, but it needs to be done regularly enough that your subconscious mind gets the message and starts running that for you. So a lot of what we do in NLP is kind of unlearning, changing those limiting old beliefs, those mindsets about what we can and can't do, and actually shifting them to focusing on things we can do, things we do want to do, and making images of what we want things to be like, and then our subconscious mind can start collaborating and cooperating to make those things happen for us. So that's where it starts to sometimes seem like magic, like mind over matter, because we're making changes that start to just be done for us automatically and routinely. So that's what I wanted to say to you. Phil wants to come in to talk to you a bit about how the eyes work, but if anyone's got any specific questions on what I've just covered and told you, to just give you a little introduction to it, then please go ahead and ask. Okay, I think I've stunned everyone into silence. One or two people discovered super qualities that they didn't know they had, being able to stretch even with a bad shoulder. And so on. Yes, she did have a bad shoulder, but she's just amazed herself by being able to twist it down. Yeah, so would you like to Phil, come and join you now. That's just representational systems. It's just showing how we gather each of those in NLP. We look at each of the senses and then look at the kinds of words and imagery that go along with that. But I'm not going to go into detail because Phil's going to go into on eyes and eye accessing cues. Okay, so Phil, I'll come back at the end, everybody.
Yeah, not that long. Okay. Hello again. You seem to have eye accessing cues on screen. Okay, let's just have a look at this. Now, what we're doing this evening, which is inevitable in an event like this, is we are looking at the tip of the iceberg. So there's a whole, always it's tricky to find the right words exactly to say when describing these things, because I want to give people the impression, I want to give you the idea that there is a lot to NLP, but at the same time, I don't want to give you the idea that it's complicated, because it's not. So there's a lot of it, and it all locks together in various ways. And it's, let's put it this way, it's complex, but it's not complicated. Hope that makes sense to you. It's complex. There's a lot of different aspects, and they all work together in certain ways. But it's no more surprising. The kind of information, the way it works, is no more difficult than learning to drive or learning to type or doing any of the kind of, you know, very ordinary things that most of us do. So what we're doing here, and also when we're actually teaching the course, I often say to people, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So what we do is, you know, if you've ever done jigsaw puzzles, you'll know that sometimes you have to get a certain piece for another piece to make sense. So NLP is very much like that. Now, I've tried over many, many years now, different ways of teaching NLP, and I've tried to teach it in a linear way. You know, first we do this, then we do this, then we do the next thing. And I've never found that to work. What I have found works is to take parts of it, just like when you do a jigsaw puzzle, you know, and people have different systems for jigsaw puzzles. Some people will sort of put all the blue bits in place first. Some people will find all the bits that look like grass. Some people will put the whole of the outside together. And we have different ways of doing this, but however you do it, it's pieces. And the more pieces you have, the more the whole thing makes sense. So that's how we tend to teach NLP. Now, if you followed some of the things you've been saying this evening, like the idea that we construct reality within our own minds, that we don't experience external reality directly, that the way we construct it makes a difference, can make it good or bad, or positive or negative, and so on, then you should be okay following through on the next section that we look at here. So what we're going to talk about here, I'm going to show you accessing cues in a moment. I've sneakily shown you them a couple of times anyway, but then we'll talk about what they actually are and how they work as part of the whole system. So this is what we call representational systems. Now, everything that you experience, and this is absolutely true for every human being, you're going to have, and interestingly, you know, it's visual, auditory means hearing, kinesthetic, which means feeling and emotions, physical sensations and emotions is kinesthetic. But occasionally you get people say, yeah, but suppose I was blind, you know, then that one wouldn't apply. Or suppose I was deaf, well, that one wouldn't apply. Well, I have worked in the past with blind people, and I have worked with deaf people, and I've also worked with people who are deaf and blind. And one of the things I know from that is that they still see things and they still hear things. They have their own internal universe in which they see and hear. So it won't be the same as a sighted person or a hearing person, but there is a whole world in there. These senses are internal, they exist internally, so they're always there for everybody. Now, in order for us to do, I mentioned this earlier, in order for us to do anything from the most simple to the most complex things, if we want to make a cup of tea, or we want to drive to the office, or we want to fall in love, we have to have a process that takes place inside us made up of these three things. There has to be a visual, a kinesthetic, and an auditory element, and these three things all work together. We also have these two, olfactory, gustatory, which do with smell and taste. And we'll ignore this bit because this particular chart is about words, and it's just relating the words to the senses. Olfactory, gustatory is smell and taste. So really, that's just your usual five senses. Now, these three are the most important. So most people, for instance, in order to make themselves happy, won't necessarily have a taste or a smell. They might have, but they won't necessarily have. Whereas everybody will have some of these elements. Now, if you think about the fact that information has to be taken in through the five senses, then it has to be organized in our minds, in our brains, within our neurology, has to be organized within a certain way. And then, in order to make anything happen, that information that's been stored inside has to then be brought outside again in the form of speech or behavior, action of some kind, in order to make things happen. So here's where you get the coding aspect, the programming aspect. in order for that to happen, it has to come in as a visual experience, an auditory experience, or a kinesthetic experience. We'll just look at the main three. Now, here's your top bonus for the evening, is that it is possible to tell when looking at another person exactly how they are taking information in. And it's also possible to tell how they are bringing that information out again. Now, people have said lots of very stupid things about this concept of eye accessing cues. And we've heard people say, oh yeah, we had that in the office. The trainer came in, you know, and they taught us that if you look up here to the right, that means you're lying. No, it doesn't. So if you've been taught that, forget it, it's not true. It's far more complex than that. And again, it's complex, but not complicated. But here's what happens. And the reason this can be useful for you is go back to this can be useful in so many ways. We always give this to people as a basic skill and piece of knowledge that they can take away immediately and start using. You can start using this immediately with your family, with your friends. You know, even if you're in lockdown and you can't go out, you can watch movies and you can improve your understanding of this. And then when you do go out, you can use it with real humans. This is what happens. When somebody says visual construction over here, I'm not sure if you've got them. Yeah, I've got the big letters as well, which makes it a bit easier. Now, when you see somebody's eyes go up and to the right, and remember it's their right, not your right, when you see their eyes go up and to the right, they are making a picture. So what we call visually constructed. They're making a picture. When they go over and to the left, they're remembering something. They're remembering an image. So this is all about images at this level. They're looking up into the brain. And over here, they're making up pictures, and over here, they're remembering pictures. Now, down here on this level, which is in line with the ears, so there might be a clue there. It's almost as if they're looking at their ears to find out what they're hearing. Over here is auditory constructed, which is to say that they are imagining, they're constructing a sound. What would a sound be like if? What would such a sound be? And over here you have auditory remembered, which is to say that they're remembering a sound, something they have actually heard, whether just in their imagination or whether in the external world, they're remembering it here. Down here and to the right, we have kinesthetic. Kinesthetic is emotions and physical sensations. The reason they're grouped together is because the two are completely meshed together. In English, we have the same word. We say feelings, and it can mean your emotions, and it can mean your physical sensations. But again, you don't usually have one without the other. They tend to be together. And then down here is auditory digital. So that's just a way of saying in, oops, let's go back again. That's just a way of saying in Latin, talking to yourself. So this is where you see people doing this, they're talking to yourself. Now, this is how you can begin to understand how people put information together. You can also understand how they bring information out again. And one of your top tips is start watching people you interact from. If you like this and you want to develop it more and understand it more, maybe go ahead and do the course and put the whole thing in context and become able to make it work for you. This is a really good place to start. We always give this to people when we do these introductions live, which we normally do. We have little cards that we give people. We can't really do this for you here. You can get this stuff on. You can get these, you know, you can get little cards online. You can easily print them off and cut them out, carry them around, hold them up, and look at people. You might have to do that a bit surreptitiously, you know, especially when you're in we recommend restaurants, cafes, and so on, anywhere where you can just watch people. Also with your nearest and dearest. So when you see their eyes go up here, they're making a picture. So you've just said something to them. Let's say you said, why don't we go to Switzerland for a holiday this year? And they've never been to Switzerland and they don't know anything about Switzerland particularly. It's just a word to them. So what do? They make a picture of Switzerland. They make a picture. They imagine a picture of Switzerland. Now, if they have been there, and they're going to have to, this is how humans understand things. They have to get some internal representation, otherwise there's no meaning, there's no understanding. And if only all teachers knew this, how much easier and happier our lives would be when we were at school, and how much more easily and how much faster and more effectively we would learn if they knew this simple stuff. Many so-called dyslexics are really not dyslexic at all. Well, dyslexic is a funny word, it doesn't really mean anything, but I know because I studied it for years and I taught people how to deal with it. But over here is a remembered image. So if they have been to Switzerland, or they've read books, or they've seen a movie or whatever, their eyes might go over here to collect an image of Switzerland from the past, so that they can decide whether or not they like the idea. Now, if you see their eyes go up here, they go, oh yeah, picture of Switzerland, or mountains, cows, yeah, that's okay. What sort of sounds were there? Let's just imagine, for the sake of the example, you know, they saw a film about Switzerland. So they go over here and they go, yeah, pictures of Switzerland, yeah, mountains, blue skies, great, snow, fine. Over here, oh yeah, sounds, cowbells, breeze in the trees, the sound of skis whooshing down through the snow. Oh great, got some nice sounds there as well. How do I feel about that? You'll see their eyes go down here as they get an emotion. And if they get a positive emotion, because all this stuff was quite good, you might see their eyes go over here as they talk to themselves. And they might quite literally, in their own mind, and we all know we talk to ourselves in our own minds, they might quite literally be saying to themselves, yeah, that all sounds pretty good, okay. And then they might go back over here to construct a picture of what it would be like if they went there, and then their eyes will come back to you. And they'll say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's start looking at some brochures or phoning some travel agents. Now, why is that useful? It's useful because you know exactly how it is that they put together their that's quite a complicated one, and I've done that deliberately to give you an example of everything. But often people just have 2 or 3 stages, that's all. And remember, this stuff happens really fast. You know, their eyes will just be zipping from place to place. Sometimes their eyes will stop and really linger in a particular direction, and that's where they really do need to really collect the feeling, or have a good look at the image, or really talk to themselves about it. And one of the typical patterns you'll see for depression and negative emotions. If somebody's complaining about being depressed, or if somebody gets tense or stressed a lot, this is what you will very typically see. You'll see that they have an image. They have an image of something bad from the past. Then they will talk to themselves about that image, and maybe they'll say things like, that always happens to me, or what if that will have to happen again? That kind of thing. And then their eyes will go over here because they generated an emotion. So that's what we would call their strategy for making themselves depressed. Now remember, we said earlier on, because we make things happen inside ourselves. They don't happen, there's no one else doing it, you know? It's just us inside in our own brains. There's no one else in there doing this stuff, we're doing it. And true, it's happening unconsciously, and it seems automatic, and it seems that it comes to us from outside. But once we get the hang of this kind of thing, we can start to take control of that kind of thing and changing it. There's so many examples of this we don't have time to go into now, but that would be a typical pattern. So it would be, oh, a bad experience that I have a picture of, talk to myself about how bad it was, make it even worse, maybe come up with the idea it could happen again, and then go and have bad feelings about it, then come back to you and say, I'm depressed. This is also a typical strategy for many arguments. People who repeatedly, if you have a significant other or somebody you work with or something, you keep having the same argument, which is very typical, it never gets resolved, it's just the same argument, you'll often see a very similar pattern. Because what they do is they go over here, you say whatever it is you say, your trigger phrase, and you say, and they go over here, once you've said whatever it is, they go over here to get a picture of you, the way you were last time they had an argument with you. Have a good look at that picture of how bad you are, how angry you are, of how disturbed you are, and then they come back here and they talk to themselves about it. And they say things like, oh my God, they've done it again, now we're going to have another, oh, I remember the last time. Is this what always happens with this person? I'm going to have quite a complex conversation, and then they'll go over here and they'll generate some negative emotions. That's it, hey presto. Nice negative emotions ready for an argument. Now, here's one of our top tips for the introduction. Is that when you're talking to people, if you see their eyes leave your face and start going off in other directions, then you should stop talking and wait for their eyes to come back. That's all, top tip for this evening. Just relax and wait. Because while their eyes are moving around, they're not paying attention to you. They're not looking at you, they're not listening to you, and they're not understanding things about you. They're processing the information in their own brain, in their own mind. When their eyes come back to you, that's when they're ready to communicate with you again. So just pause and allow that to happen. Now, there's probably a couple of hundred things you can do once you understand eye accessing, but that's your top tip for the evening, so you can get to grips with the basic idea. And I recommend you start doing it immediately. You may have noticed people's eyes moving in the past, but you may never have occurred to you that it means something, and it means something quite specific. So I think that's everything we wanted to say really about NLP, about the way we teach it and the course we're running. And if you have questions now and things you'd like to discuss, we'd be very happy to do that. And you can all unmute yourselves, and we can have a little chat about those items. Leila's just back in the room now. Okay.
Hi, yes. Both share the screen.
Take it off a minute, very much.
Okay, so I'm back again with you. Anybody got any questions about anything that either of us have said? Phil's sitting here next to me, so he can come on screen if necessary. Any questions, any observations, reflections, please go ahead. We stunned you into silence. You want information overload? Not sure if you're asleep. Somebody might have started having a dinner or eaten it already. Anything at all? Yes, yes, yeah. But it's also unusual for nobody to have anything to say, so anything at all. Phil and I are just chatting amongst ourselves or waiting for you to be...
Yeah, what normally happens at this stage when it's live is you get lots of questions and discussion, and you know, you've often been there for a long time after.
Yeah, we won't be a really long time tonight because we overran by about, well, actually we haven't done too bad. We've overrun by about 5 minutes or so, which is about the time that we were down for when we had our freeze and our reboot. But I know that earlier on I had a conversation, I think that was with Constance, wasn't it? About teaching and NLP in teaching. Nobody got anything to say about NLP in teaching, parenting, healthcare, business, anything at all?
Well, looks like you're all too shy, Leila.
Are you all too shy or just exhausted? Just give us a little bit of feedback before we say bye-bye then.
Hi, this is Sumaya.
Hi, who's that speaking? Is that Andrea? No, not Andrea.
Sumaya, can you hear me?
Ah, Sumaya. Okay, yep, I can hear you, but a lot of crackling going on at the same time.
Yeah, now is it better?
That's much better, yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Okay,
Sumaya.
Actually, I don't have much to say other than thank you, and thank you, Phil, for the, amazing and valuable information. So I went through the NLP. I took the NLP practitioner course and the Master Practitioner and the NLP coaching. And I just wanted to come here just to, refresh, reconnect, and, having sort of motivation to continue with my work. So I got that. So I just want to thank you so much for the information and for the session.
Well, Sumaya, I have to say, as one of the best NLP students that we've ever had, I wouldn't really expect you to have many questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil. Thank you.
Actually, she was one of our first NLP students to have to do some work online because of we were in Morocco at the time, and this is before the shutdown. So actually, when we came back, she was able to do some face-to-face before the shutdown, but she'd already done a lot online. So what Sumaya proved to us, which was really interesting, was that you can actually pick up a lot of the theory and a fair bit of the practice online, but then obviously it's really good when you come together to practice in person and to do the coaching skills, and she was able to do her coaching face-to-face.
Yeah, I agree on that, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for coming along, and you're very welcome to creatively swipe our ideas. We like it when people run workshops and introduce people to NLP, especially when they understand what NLP is and they haven't got it mixed up with other things.
Yes,
so thank you for that, and thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
thank you.
So Sumaya was the only person that we're aware of who's actually done NLP in the group. Anyone else who's in the group who hasn't done NLP, as I said, please feel free to chip in. But if you need to go, we totally understand, because I said we've come to the end of our time now.
And it's dinner time.
Well, some people might have dinner before they came online. Okay. So if there's nothing else then, nobody else anything they want to say, we hope that means that we stun you into a positive silence, and not that we've worn you out. please do feel free to get in touch, and Illuminations has got all the details for how you register. We are actually going to run at least one more repeat. It'll be much the same thing. Sometimes these things vary a bit because people ask more questions or get involved, and therefore each one can be a bit different. But as you're a very quiet, shy group, we pretty much stuck to our script. But you're very welcome to come back, as I said, if you want to. And if you'd like to register for the course, this will be your last chance to actually do it in person for some time, because after this summer, we're not sure when after the summer we're going to be able to get back. So, you know, what we do over the next few months after June will be online. And there'll be a proviso to anything we do online, which is that you can get provisionally certified, but you can't get the final actual qualification until you've done some face-to-face work with the trainer. That's where we stand at the moment with NLP. Richard Bandler, who I think we'll probably mention, Richard, has decided that he'll be flexible enough to let people do the training online, but that in order to get the full certificate rather than the provisional, they need to do some face-to-face training, because that's how really ideally NLP should be taught, is face-to-face. So any queries about that can go to Illuminations, and as I said, it will be in the Abu Dhabi branch for the first time on Reem Island. And if anyone's in Dubai and going, oh, well, I wish it was in Dubai, let me say we've been running NLP in Dubai for many years. And so it's time for the Abu Dhabi group. Yeah, we've had people coming to us from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, so we know that you can travel the other way around. It is possible to be done. Okay, so if there's nothing else, no other comments, then we'll just say hi. Les, if you want to unmute yourself, I think Phil wants to say hi to you. Oh, Constance given the thumbs up, which is great.
Thanks, Constance.
We're glad you are still awake and alive, Constance. Thank you for that. Les, anything, did you want to say something to Les?
Hey, bruv.
Hi.
Thanks very much, Phil.
You're welcome. We're just saying hello and goodbye, really, because you and I have already had a WhatsApp communication.
Aye, we have indeed. Yeah. Good to see you. See you next time.
Yeah, you too, you too. So have a chat tomorrow or the day after.
And either, whatever is convenient for you is cool with me.
Great, okay. More soon.
Message me daytime and that'll be cool, mate. Good to see you guys.
Okay.
Okay, I think this is our furthest away from the UK today.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a webinar the other night where I had two people from Canada, so they were even further away. So that's, as I say, one or two people put thumbs up, say bye-bye. So as I say, it's your last chance. Anyone got any questions, then ask. If not, we're going to say bye-bye and we'll go and have our dinner. If you've had yours already, then you can go and have a nice rest, go to bed, and we'll be in touch. Come and follow us and watch other webinars that we have coming up soon. I have an assertiveness session this weekend. Yeah. Okay. So thanks all for joining us. Thanks for listening, and be in touch as soon as we can, whenever you're ready. Bye for now.
Thanks very much. Bye.